It's a Tuesday edition of the Husker247 Podcast. I'm Michael Bruntz. Brian Christopherson joins me over there. We are on fall camp eve here on Tuesday. Nebraska gets officially underway with fall camp on the 5th. Brian, how you doing? Is it you got the cookies out on the fireplace for fall camp claws?
Did you see me eating a cookie? I actually do have a cookie right
There
here.
you go.
But
look to the cookie.
Yeah. I might have to set them out tonight. Don't know what my wife will think of that. Like, if see that as a little odd as I put them by the fireplace and maybe start the fireplace. It is like low 70s, so maybe it makes sense.
Yeah, it feels like Christmas right around the corner here in Lincoln. We had a mini Nebraska media days this morning. We heard from 10 players.
Yep.
A couple quarterbacks, a few defensive linemen, a couple wide receivers, one offensive lineman. Lots to kind of unpack, I guess, as we get rolling on fall camp here. What give me a big takeaway. What'd you learn today, Brian? Anything interesting? Owen Chambliss was there, and he's always a good listen. You were over there.
Yeah, I would probably start with Chambliss. He's really engaging, and you always hear about his high football IQ. He's definitely good at communicating, in the media setting, that's for sure. Like he can take about any question, doesn't accept the premise of some questions, which I always appreciate.
Good.
Yeah, he's like, I don't know about that, on like once or twice, which I think shows some quick smarts, because not everybody's blessed with that. But I don't know. He seems pretty excited about what they've got going. And when someone brought up Rob Orich with him and sort of what he's brought to the guys who were on this Husker team last year but didn't have the Orich experience, Chambliss said he's got definite swagger, and it carries over to other guys. Like that comes out in other guys after they play for him a bit. So I don't know. He takes very seriously that responsibility about knowing what everything does on the defense, not just his spot, but all the other spots, and being able to relay that to guys. So there's a reason why we had him number 4 overall in our top defensive guy of everybody in the most indispensable Huskers. And I feel fine about that pick going into the camp.
The toe, okay? You mentioned the toe.
Yeah, I did toe. I brought up the toe, actually. He seemed fine. And I brought it up in the sense that in the spring, Rule mentioned that he had a toe injury and that Chambliss was still fighting to play, or practice in the spring. And the coach thought very highly of that. And Chambliss answered, Husker fans would love too, about why he did that, was you only get so many times to be on a football field and play football. So he's just sort of a nut about the game, it seems, who wants to be out there every chance he can get, even if it's like a Tuesday on March 2nd.
Yeah, he's an interesting case, because when you kind of start talking about what this defense can be in 2026, and guys learning this defense, and it's I don't know if you ran across this, but over the between Chicago and then today, guys have kind of said they feel like they finally have the grasp of it. And I don't know that they would necessarily have said that if they pounded a bunch of truth serum back in the spring, that they really could kind of put their arms around what this defense is going to be. I was talking to Jameer Khan, and he's going to be a guy that's going to be really important in this defense. He's playing safety. He's got to make the checks and calls. He's got to know the terminology, all that other stuff. And to circle back to Chambliss, he's been spending a lot of time in the facility after hours with Chambliss, with Dwayne McDougal, just kind of picking those guys' brain about, how this thing kind of operates and how to communicate things, what the coaches are looking for in this particular defense, because it's he said it's not overly complicated. It's just a matter of just knowing what everything is called and being able to anticipate kind of and see things the way that the coaches see them. Like I think that's kind of the thing that has been the fine tuning during the offseason is getting the guys that were on the roster last year up to the point of, McDougal and Chambliss and those guys where they truly understand what's going on. And that'll be fascinating kind of right out of the gates to see how much more advanced they are than when we last saw them at the end of March. You would hope significantly more so. But I don't know. I guess more than usual, I've heard guys say, well, I needed to work more on this, or I was expecting to this, but I had to learn this. And so maybe they're in a better spot to start fall camp than because of it.
They have a bunch of smart guys on defense. You can pick up on that, like Anthony Jones, Jasir Whittington. Think about when you've conversed with them, Bruntz, like, Jasir Whittington, like after spring ball, and we talked about Chambliss here. McDougal is similar. Jameer Khan is definitely this way. They're like highly engaging people who are highly engaged in football, right? I mean, to the utmost. And that might seem obvious, like, well, of course they are. That's what they're here for. But full well, there have been some really good players and even guys who have been good enough to be on a 2-deep where football's not like everything to them, and they're not like going to, dissect it from all angles. And I feel like they do have a healthy collection of guys on defense who are sort of built in that, let's get by the film projector. The film projector is obviously what they still use over at the stadium. Winding up. That would add an element, though. That sound would be great. Like if you're in the game. Jameer Khan, we've been high on Jameer Khan. Donovan Jones, we've been really high on. We'll see how that goes. This is patting ourselves on the back before we even get to camp. So let's see what they actually do. But I'm talking about on this team, like what their roles are going to be. Like, I feel very good that we had both of those guys like in the top 15 on our list, and like how important they are. That doesn't mean they're going to crush it. That, you know what I mean?
Yeah, no, you're taking your victory lap. I get it.
No, I just think people have underestimated Donovan Jones around here a little bit. Like how big he is to what the whole operation of what they're trying to do as the nickelback.
You think that's just because he can do so many things? Like, is it complex, too complex for what his role might be?
I mean, it's not like he's arrived or anything, so I get it why he wouldn't be the most talked about guy. But like, I just think the nickel in this defense, and that seems like where he's going to set up. Looks like Khan's going to be that safety next to McDougal. I mean, Guthrie might have something to say about it, but Donovan Jones, Rule talked about him. He's up to 200 some pounds, and he tested like low 4.5s, I think, in the 40, which for his size, pretty darn good. A legit 4.5, like
you not hearing some 4.5s.
Yeah, we're past the days of like 1996 where every recruit ran a 4.36, even though it was a 4.73. It sounds like Donovan Jones is legit 4.5 and has great size and learned a lot from last year. So he was one of the guys who spoke. Did you hear a lot from him?
A little bit. I was over on con duty for a fair amount of time and kind of swooped around for some Van Poppel. It's the secondary. I think I'm eager to kind of see how that shakes out for where everybody fits into things. I do think, based on going back to the bowl game and bowl practices, they really like the makeup of Jameer Khan, and how important he's going to be in terms of a guy who works hard, who understands the system, who is one of their better cover guys, I think, as well, and a guy that can, cover in space. He's not afraid to be physical against the run as well. And so, that was where I spent most of my time. He's also going to be we it feels like we've glossed over it in part because we haven't just had a ton of time with special teams guys. But he's going to be, kind of a stalwart on special teams once again. He's blocked punts. He's dedicated himself to that part of the game. And, obviously Mike Eckler not being there, that's a big, some big and some loud shoes to fill. But at the same time, like, you're going to need to lean on guys like Khan that were there last year, that went through everything, that made those plays, in order to kind of keep things to where they are.
Yeah, for sure. Maybe the most underrated quality I think that helps Khan out and has helped him this whole offseason, he's kind of got an old school vibe to him that you pick up on quickly, where he's like from a different generation a little bit, in the sense of he's not afraid to, I think, call people out. You know what I mean? Like, I think he totally will tell someone if they've messed up, and be that kind of guy. And I think that's huge at that safety spot. Like, they need, and they're going to need other guys too. Don't get me wrong. Like, we'll let the competition play out. I was being a little jokey there about, it looks like he's in good position going into camp, but Rex Guthrie's back healthy. Caleb Benning, played, had a lot of tackles in the bowl game and grown his game in the offseason. There's some other guys back there that are going to be interesting, but whoever's, playing those safety spots, they need to be in command vocally, and they need to be sure of themselves with angles and tackling to a degree that was missing too much from some vets last year, where you would have hoped for a little better. They've got to clean that up if this team's going to take a step. Otherwise, it's going to be a deal where you play okay for, 3 out of 4 snaps, but the 4th snap can't be an explosive, or at worst, yet a 50-yard touchdown.
Yeah, no, that was part of the issue last year. I mean, you look at what the defense was, and certainly the defensive line was not up to snuff last year, but there were also, like you said, those plays where you have a team mostly bottled up, and then you have a 40-yard run or something like that completely flips the field and changes the complexion of the game. The last thing on Khan, I think as you kind of we get further into the transfer portal era, there's going to be guys that naturally where they come from affects the way that you think about them. Like, guys that come from the SEC to Nebraska or wherever are going to get the headlines because of, where they're moving from. I think there's a ton of value in guys like Jameer Khan, like Andrew Marshall, guys that have kind of had to come up through the levels, and I think maybe have an appreciation for where they are, in a way of like, well, I've gone to a place where I needed to share a practice field with other sports if I was going to try to get work in late at night, that kind of thing. So I don't know. Like, I think the more you kind of see guys come into your program, you see guys that transfer in, and you fill needs. I think there's a lot of value in finding guys like that and putting those guys on your roster for that reason. I mean, I just think, there's just kind of a different level of care there. And that's not saying that those guys from the SEC don't, but you just kind of feel it when you talk to guys like that.
The most ultra confident guy I talked to was, who do you think it was? Do you have a guess?
It was Ja'Cory Barney.
No, not today.
Really?
Not today. Although I missed some. Maybe, I have my tape recorder over there, so we'll see everything he said. Isaiah Hunter.
Okay.
Just like what he thinks this offense is going to be, his confidence in his own skill set. He's really big on Calandria. He was part of some of the vets, like 3 receivers went down there to Florida with Calandria, worked out. I'll be writing about that here in a minute after this. But I think he feels like he's got a little bit more to put on the field. Had a good year last year, was their leading receiver, got hurt near the end. He ended up with like 600 plus yards, but if you look at the numbers, Bruntz, it was like the last 3 or 4 games, there was hardly anything there because they fell off a cliff passing it. The thing that he brought up was the downfield passing. Like, he really thinks that is going to open it up. He's excited about the extended plays. He mentioned, we talked about going back and even studying Vanderbilt last year with Pavia and how they worked that, and guys got juice out of that because they think Calandria can do that as well as Pavia. That's what he said. So we'll see. But he was super enthusiastic, as you might expect, the first day before fall camp about where the offense was going. You'd rather hear that than the opposite, I suppose, if a guy's on the team, right?
We kind of went back and forth a little bit on the wide receivers, didn't we? Like, about kind of how you stack those guys up. Like, I think ultimately in our list, was Barney ahead of Hunter?
We had Hunter higher, barely. Okay. Barney's got that return aspect if he's a big-time punt returner that you got to factor in. But Isaiah was explosive last year. They don't win 1 or 2 games maybe without him making critical plays, at certain spots.
Yeah, I mean, I think what you highlighted is a key point of why it feels like there's a lot more in the tank for him. Like, he was dinged up towards the end of the year, didn't play in the bowl game. Nebraska, by necessity, I think, started leaning a lot more on Emmett Johnson in the run game, to the detriment of the wide receivers and what their opportunities were there. I was surprised that Nebraska didn't work harder to try to get Hunter more down the field, or get him in places where he could catch the ball and run that wasn't the screen that they hit on a couple times and kept going back to. Like, it didn't feel like there was a level of creativity with him that really benefited him or the offense much. And I'm curious to see what they can cook up this year, because it feels like, even going back to Cal, he could get down the field on guys, and he made some big plays in the passing game. And I guess I was expecting more of that, and hopefully they're able to unlock something there.
Yeah. I don't know if it was as much by design or the fact that, 7 games into last year after Minnesota and the 9 sacks up there, they had allowed 25 of them. And it was sort of like, okay, this is a problem. There's missed assignments that are causing these. Also, if you want to call spade a spade, I feel like Raiola was playing a certain game last year where he was sometimes more so focused, which is fair, on protecting the ball than sometimes taking that shot, that chance that you sometimes have to do. And it just wasn't really part of it last year. I give the receivers credit. Everybody came back, like they came back to do it again, because in this day and age, you could have had a guy or two. And I realize some guys are under contracts and stuff like that, but you could have had a guy or two who said, you know what? We didn't even get the ball in November, so like, why am I going to go do that again? But they like Latif, and they like Anthony right now, both Ja'Cory and Isaiah. So it will be interesting to see how much, when they do throw it downfield, is just in natural rhythm, where like it's drop back and that's sort of the plan, or it's within the play, or how much of it, and I think more of it is honestly going to come when he just gets outside the pocket and a guy, there's sort of a second act to the play.
Well, and you've written about this, I think, a few times in the offseason. I mean, when you just compare Anthony Calandria's success throwing the deep ball and willingness to throw the deep ball, it's going to be an abrupt change if Nebraska allows him to play in the way that he played last year at UNLV, in that way, right? Like, if they let him, if you let Anthony cook, you let him chuck it down the field, I mean, he's willing to do that and willing to, take a little risk to make a big play. there's the payoff there. We haven't even mentioned Quasi Gilmore yet as another guy in that group. And, I was over there too when Isaiah was talking about the wide receiver group. And I think the feeling over there is that Quinn Clark is poised for a very big year, or a bigger year than maybe what we've seen to this point, just based on what he's shown and also just where he's at in his career. So I don't know. I do think I'm eager to see what Isaiah Hunter looks like in 26 for a multitude of reasons.
Yeah. Quinn Clark had a good offseason. Cortez Mills was at a good offseason, it sounds like, to give him maybe 5 there at that spot. So that will be a group to definitely watch. I guess another thing that stood out today to me, Anthony Calandria, first, this part, I don't think he's going to say a lot this year. And I don't say that in any sort of like, that's good or bad or whatever. I think he's capable of saying more than he says up front, but that's just not going to be what he does. And that's fine. I do, always am curious, I guess, like how a guy's going to respond to all the attention when you have a tough game and everything around these parts. He said, I don't look at my phone during the season and stuff like that. We'll see how he does it, blocking out the noise. But at least up front at the podium, he's just kind of matter of fact. He always, sort of pumps up his guys, but he keeps it short, and that's fine. But one group he did pump up in a short answer was the O-line. When he was asked about them, he said they're elite. I think they're the best front 5 I've played behind. Said whether it's pass blocking or run blocking, they are basically closer knit or more together. He used the word together than, you might expect from a group that has 3 transfers and just started working in, January, February.
I was thinking about this because I was listening to Paul Mubenga talk a little bit. I think from the outside, one of the big storyline is you've added 3 transfers, and how do you get all those transfers on the same page and get guys together and everything? That's just kind of the nature of things now, right? For these guys, guys leave the program, new guys come in, you kind of figure out how to get them in. Justin Evans has been huge, I think, and Elijah Pritchett as well, for getting those 3 and the group of 5 on the same page. But is your sense that the expectation for that group, has it reached an unfair level as we sit here on August 4th, or what do you make of the conversation around that group?
No, a lot of the compliments have come in-house, even in Chicago when Rule, I don't know why he would answer otherwise, though. It's okay, I think, sometimes to lean into we feel good about him, we're confident. I think that's useful, actually. And maybe more of that sometimes is needed, instead of are they going to be, I get where the reaction on the outside naturally, I posted the quote Calandria had on social media about the O-line, and, the first response is LOL, are they better than, Lincoln High sort of talk. There's always going to be that response, but I like that, if it's a group that has 7,000 plus snaps between the 5, you should be optimistic of what you can get done. And I think they had a good spring too in the practices from the sound of things. So, there is reason to be hopeful there. I also get completely why a fan would say, I'll take that with some optimism. And I think people have honestly allowed the O-line optimism to be something they're kind of I'm okay with that. Don't you? I feel like that's been the one topic where, because of Jeep and the guys they brought in from the portal, everyone felt really good about those portal ads, and then so that's the first part. Then there's Evans and Pritchett. You're okay, I can at least sort of sit up in my chair and feel like that can be something without going nuts about it. And I think that's where the fan base sort of is with the O-line.
Do you think it's more about Jeep? How much of it is tied up in Jeep?
I think somewhat, because it was just if you think back, we've written about a lot of coaches who can recruit well, or they are said that they can recruit well. But have you ever had a guy who, and it was aided by the fact it's portal season, you just got here, make it happen. And he did, like they get, 3 guys right away that he and Lonnie Teasley had built relationships with in the past. So they already knew sort of what those guys were about. I think that's part of it too. I think people know that the relationships that they have with a few of those guys actually goes a little deeper even than just the portal season. So there's sort of this feeling of they did their due diligence even before that, the January, like these are the kind of guys we want. So I think that's where it is. And he had great, Georgia Tech did interesting stuff. They play football like in a style that Nebraska fans kind of appreciate, with a running quarterback, and third fewest sacks allowed last year. They only gave up 9. Their yards per rush, I think, were 10th nationally, where Nebraska was 82nd, even with Emmett Johnson's big season. So I do think there's a big Jeep factor. Of course, as you know, it takes like one rough week in October and you're just another coach,
It's a short honeymoon. And Paul Mabenga was talking that they've watched a lot of Georgia Tech stuff, film wise, and kind of how they want to do things. And, he had mentioned that, obviously he's got a long-standing relationship with Jeep, who recruited him going back to when he was a coach at Appalachian State, but was also recruiting his brother as well, who's at Arkansas when Jeep was at Georgia Tech. But the work that he got done at Georgia Tech is one of the reasons that Mabenga is there, is because he wants to play at the next level. He knows what Jeep Wade has done in putting guys in that situation, and kind of eager to see what that's like. I was just wondering, like, have we reached that point where the offensive line hype is it officially spilling out of the pitcher yet? I don't think it's there, but I think you're right. That's like the one area that there's at least just a small amount of consensus that people are willing to dream about with what's ahead in 26. A lot of hopes hinging on that group.
Yeah. I mean, if they're not up to, if they can't cut it, it's going to be a long year in this league. They should be good. I mean, they should be good. We'll see if they're better than good. That's the question. Like, they should be solid. And what beyond that can you do? And that's what they're going to have to prove to people. I'm excited to see him play and see what it looks like, however it goes. But I am kind of to that spot where it's like, embrace some expectations sometimes. And like, I remember Dave Tollefson this will get us, we can finish off soon here if you want, but Riley Van Poppel was up there today, and Tollefson did an interview. It was with Michael Severe. And he mentioned, talking to Riley and Riley understanding, like, I have to be this guy. It's like, this is what is asked of me this year. I need to be this sort of player for this team. And the way Tollefson put it, that's a good thing. Like, you have that responsibility. Go make the play, get out that block and make that play that maybe was missing last year in a time where it could have been something more. So I think a little bit of that's all right. So we'll see. Did you hear much of Van Poppel?
I did a little bit, just about, I think defensively this 4-man front fits him better. He's going to be asked to do different things, not having to be the guy that gets his name called and just kind of affecting plays with eating blocks and that kind of thing. I think there's a little bit more simplicity in it for him there. And, I think also, a guy that kind of took his lumps last year and, is ready to turn the page and definitely embraced the changes on defense. And my sense is that he's not alone among that defensive front and guys that need to, be a big part of what Nebraska is doing this year. So, and he's also going to be a key piece because as you talk about some of the younger guys getting Petchak up to, a better place as a sophomore, what can Tyson Terry give you? Malcolm Simpson, Is Dylan Berryman going to be a factor this year as a absolute mountain of a freshman? I mean, those are all, the guys that Van Poppel is having to lead. So he's going to be an important piece for them this year for sure.
Yeah. You just sent me a picture of Berryman.
He's not small.
No.
Not small.
What's he listed at? 350 or something?
There was some question between the print and the online listing of whether he was 350 or 330. I think whichever road you choose, you're arriving at a large 18 or 19-year-old kid. So we'll see what the picture kind of looks like for him this year. Anything else? Nebraska, by the way, I guess we can finish on this. Nebraska received a few votes in the coaches poll, essentially tied for 41st in the way too early preseason release of the coaches poll. But that surprise you at all? Did it surprise you that they got votes, I guess?
No. I mean, it'd be interested who voted what on that. What'd be interesting is how many people actually voted for him. Because, they got 12 points. Sometimes it's written they got votes. So it's like, if one person had him 16th and one other person had him 24th or whatever, maybe two people voted for him, but you get 12 points. So I think I'm not surprised because there ends up being like 50 some teams in there. If you look at like most of the preseason stuff, it's a pretty fair representation of where Nebraska's been in almost everything. They've basically been in that 35 to 45 range. And so I think they think they're probably better than that. But I think Phil Steele had him like 32nd or something in his power poll. But he also had him like 61st in his like factoring in the schedule poll. We're not supposed to talk about that really.
No.
Schedule. But
Phil Snow says, get the hell out.
Well, he should say that probably within the walls, but just for the record, today in the preseason poll, if you look at the top 6, not a surprise here, but 3 of them are on Nebraska's schedule. So
there were
Ohio State 1, Oregon 2, Indiana 6, Washington 19 is on there, Iowa 22nd. I think Iowa's getting the benefit of the doubt a little, but maybe they're going to do that.
They're an easy thing to bet on. They're as steady as pleated khaki pants. You can always rely on those.
That's a pretty good comparison.
But that's all we got for today. We'll have plenty from today is a little mini media days. Matt Rule's meeting with us on Saturday ahead of Fan Day, so plenty going on at Husker247. Until then, 60% off your first year at Husker247 with the code Husker60. Like I said, plenty going on right now. Still rolling out off-season basketball content. Recruiting is going to get fired up again here as well. Tons of high school schedules and action starting in various places. So lots going on at Husker247 during the month of August. So get there and check us out. Husker60 is the code that gets you 60% off your first year at Husker247. We'll be back with another podcast on Thursday. For Brian Christopherson, I'm Michael Bruntz. Thank you for listening.